What is up, my fellow astronauts? Let's talk about arachidonic acid, which is a fatty acid that people usually sell as a means to break plateaus, increase your strength, increase your muscle mass, and sometimes even increase your testosterone. So let's discuss all of that. Let's dive in. There's a lot of companies like this selling a supplement like arachidonic acid that is meant to increase muscle mass, but ultimately can actually backfire and cause a lot of issues. So what is arachidonic acid? Arachidonic acid is a 20 carbon saturated fat. So we have, for example, linolenic acid, which is omega-3, or you might know as fish oils, which is also omega-3. Then we have omega-6, like linoleic acid and arachidonic acid. And the reason why they call it 1, 3, 6, and 9 is because it depends on where the double bond begins in the structure. Right, so it begins at the position number 3, so this is why it's omega-3. Here it begins at position 6, this is the first double bond, this is why it's omega-6. The first double bond is here at position 9, so it's omega-9. And the closer the double bond is at the beginning of the structure, the more likely it is to become damaged and just oxidize and start creating inflammation. So this is why omega-3 is actually a lot more unstable than omega-6, with omega-9 being the most stable, right? So you do get actually like a polyunsaturated fat, poly meaning multiple. So there's multiple double bonds in an omega-9 like meat acid, but despite having multiple double bonds, it's actually very stable because double bonds only begin here at position 9 and not sooner here by position 3, for example. All right. So this is more or less the metabolism and process of arachidonic acid. So arachidonic acid is being incorporated into the cell membranes. And then you have this phospholipase A2 and C that I didn't mention here that cleaves the arachidonic acid from the phospholipid. So it becomes a free fatty acid being cleaved off the wall. Then you have cyclooxygenase and lipooxygenase that then metabolize the arachidonic acid into different metabolites. So if you have inflammation and you have pain and you have a headache, you will use a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. One of them might be like aspirin, ibuprofen, and so on. They inhibit COX-2. So these prostaglandins are highly inflammatory, or at least some of them are more inflammatory than other ones. So specifically prostaglandin E2 is anti-inflammatory and lowers testosterone. The lipooxygenase, they create a bunch of different metabolites here. Let me show you guys here. Again, we have the COX enzymes creating, for example, PGH2, and then you create all of the other prostaglandins from it, and you create thromboxanes. And if you have too much of this, it can cause thrombosis, which is not good. So you have the LOX that creates HPTEs, and from that is create epoxylins and lipoxins and HETS. So I want to focus on this HETEs, and then you have the leukotrienes as well, and then you have this CYP chrome P450 epoxyoxygenase. All right, so this is a lot of gobbledygook and stuff. You don't have to worry about any of this. All you have to focus on here is this HETE. This is what I'm going to talk about, and this COX enzymes. Right. All right. So in the context of testosterone. So why do people think that arachidonic acid can increase testosterone? So if something creates inflammation, it's going to lower testosterone. So why do people think that an inflammatory fatty acid can increase your testosterone? Because there must be some research on this. So in animals, arachidonic acid has been shown to dose-dependently increase testosterone. More arachidonic acid, higher levels of testosterone. So how is this possible that something that increases inflammation actually helps to increase testosterone? Doesn't make any sense. So they dove deeper to find out exactly why this was happening, and it seems that it's these 5, 12, and 15 HETE metabolites of arachidonic that's responsible, or mostly responsible, for the increase in testosterone, whereas this PDE created from COX inhibited testosterone. So when this is the control cells that's non-stimulated by LH or HCG, and when they add HCG to the cell, you can see testosterone production massively increases. And then when they add this prostaglandin E2, prostaglandin F2 alpha, you can see it blunts the increase in testosterone induced by HCG. So it induces inflammation and it reduces the LH receptor in the Leydig cells. So when you're eating a highly processed diet rich in omega-6, it will create a bunch of prostaglandins, which will then eventually lead to low levels of testosterone. High levels of inflammation, low levels of testosterone. So let's talk about arachidonic acid in humans. They gave these guys 1 gram of arachidonic acid per day, which was 3 times more than a placebo group. And your prostaglandin E2 increased a lot, whereas in the placebo group it went down. The arachidonic acid testosterone went down a little bit, but so it did in the testosterone. Free testosterone went down a little bit in the arachidonic acid, but so it did in the placebo group. Cortisol went up a little bit in the arachidonic acid, but so it did in the placebo group. So at least in this study, 1 gram of arachidonic acid for 56 days didn't seems to increase or decrease testosterone. And the reason I say it doesn't decrease testosterone is because the placebo group also had a decrease. So it wasn't unique to the arachidonic acid. So probably at least we know that 1 gram of arachidonic acid per day doesn't lower testosterone, but it does increase your prostaglandin E2, which will over time lead to more inflammation. That is just a fact. Then we have problems with arachidonic acid. It's inflammatory, neurotoxic, it can actually impair muscle growth. There's two studies, 2023 and 2024, both of which shows that excessive amounts of arachidonic acid will blunt muscle hypertrophy and muscle growth. It can contribute to cardiovascular disease because it's inflammatory, it stimulates aromatase because it's inflammatory, etc. So when you have too much arachidonic acid in the body, it will cause a bunch of negative effects. And given that it doesn't increase testosterone and isn't really effective in increasing muscle growth, this is not a supplement that I would use for the potential of helping me. Why would you use something that's inflammatory for hopefully it will increase your muscle mass? And the reason why people say that it might help is because when you lift, your body creates inflammation. And when you blunt the inflammation with vitamin C, aspirin, vitamin E, it can blunt the hypertrophy process. But that has actually been debunked by the guys from Stronger by Science. Really good stuff on that already. So adding more inflammation to the body is not going to help you make gains faster. On the contrary, the reason why older individuals aren't as anabolic as younger individuals is because they have muscle protein synthesis resistance. So when they lift or eat protein, they don't get the same stimulation of muscle protein synthesis because of inflammation. And when they use aspirin to blunt the inflammation, they can restore that sensitivity. So in summary, I don't think it's a good idea at all to introduce an inflammatory compound into your body, especially if your testosterone is already not high and you already have a bunch of inflammation. Then adding an inflammatory mediator or a precursor into your diet or into as a supplement is a very bad idea. First of all, it's not going to increase your testosterone, and it has not been shown to be better for increasing muscle mass or strength, anything of that kind. So it's not a good supplement to use, and it can have a bunch of side effects. The reason I made this video is because I had a client that contacted me because he got a lot of side effects from using arachidonic acid. And I want to bring awareness as to this is not a good supplement to use and it's not effective at all. So if you want to truly maximize your testosterone and muscle mass and erectile function, like all of the good stuff, join Testo Tribe. There's courses on everything there. If you join, you get a personalization call with me as well, so I can help dial in your protocol. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoyed, and I will check you in the next one. Cheers, guys.